Everyone thinks baby boomers are sitting on piles of cash, living the good life in retirement, but here's the ugly truth. Millions of boomers are broke, working into their 70s, living paycheck to paycheck. The scariest part, they're the generation that owns most of the real estate. If the wealthiest, most asset-heavy generation in history can't retire, what are the chances that we can?
Yeah, Mitch, let's look at the data. So right now, only about 2.5% of Americans actually reach millionaire status in retirement accounts. And you've got 401k millionaires, which is only about 500,000 people out of 330 million people in the US. So that's kind of crazy. And, 401k millionaire, that's just a paper asset. I don't know if they're actually actualizing cash flow or anything like that. That means most people that you see at a crowded restaurant or even on vacation, they're typically funding that with debt. Also, when looking at the data, median retirement savings, this is interesting. People aged 65 to 74 have about 200,000 in savings. And then after 75, that drops to about 130,000. So when I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, this is maybe 3-4 years of expenses that's covered, but what happens in the next 10? What happens in the next 20 years?
That's incredible though. I mean, look at the debt. 65 to 70-year-old median is $200,000. Like that to me is, when I look around a restaurant of older people, I don't think that. Like, I don't know what you think, but I'm like, I would think that people have maybe a couple million, or they have a retirement through, I mean, my dad has a retirement through the railroad, for example, but $200,000 is like, that to me is a big problem.
Well, yeah, I mean, $200,000, like it can seem like a lot when you're, 15 years old, right? But when you're 65, 74, and then that drops to say 130,000 by 75, and people are living longer than they ever have, like, well, that's the question. Like, what happens the next 10 years, 20 years? Do they move in with their children? Do they, do they have to go to a home? Like, I mean, this is actually a challenge, right?
Well, how long do they work? We talked about that up above in the intro. It's like you've got people in their 70s who are working not because they want to, because they have to. And you've got Social Security, I think, in the $1,500 to $1,900 somewhere in there, depending on how much you contributed. That's a big deal, right? Like you just don't have. To me, this data shows me that I really misunderstand the propensity of older folks to retire. Like this is alarming to me.
Well, I think this episode might take a little bit of a turn, because like when I look through this data, right, or even listening to you with your wonderful intro, I think about like the American dream, and I think about how we've been sold on this American dream of, go to school, get educated, get a job, go work for, especially the generation above us, go work for a good company for the rest of your life. Like give them every hour of your good years that you can work, and then retire when you're too old to enjoy everything, and they'll take care of you in retirement, right? Like, and part of that American dream is, buy a home, pay it off over 30 years. And at the end of that 30 years, like you have home ownership. This is like the American dream, this free and clear home. And you have this retirement, maybe it's a pension that's paying you out every month. But the reality is it's a trap. And I don't know if this is where we were going to go with this episode, but I think this called American Dream is a little bit flawed in that what I've seen happen both on a personal level and at a large scale is a lot of people work their whole fucking life because they're told they should. And there's nothing wrong with hard work. But I watch people work jobs that they absolutely hate because they're told they're supposed to. They work until they're 70 years old. They retire and then they die. And I mean, I know that's a grim truth, but like they work until they die, and all these dreams and goals and plans they had in retirement, and their home's now paid off, but they don't get to actualize the benefit of that. And all of a sudden, maybe they have a pension, or maybe they have some money in a 401k, and they never get to actualize the benefit of that. They retire, they die, they never get to actually actualize any of the money that they saved or paid off of their home, any of these things. Like, is that really the American dream?
Well, I think the American dream maybe worked at one point. There probably was a time in history where it was like, look, this is going to set you up. Like my grandpa's generation, by the time he was 16, he had a piece of land. He got married early. They had children. He did live a good life. And by the way, he had a really good retirement through the phone company. I think his retirement, he was like 35 years paid a pension. I mean, to me, that's quite a dream. But he was born in 1929. And we're still pitching that same dream to today's young folks. And I don't think that it exists anymore. And this data right here shows it. When you have the a $200,000 savings, retirement savings, 65 to 74 years old. These are folks that have worked inside of our economy. These are not people that just didn't work. This is the average. This is like, right? This is the middle of the bell curve. And so for me, that's not a dream anymore. That's a nightmare. If I'm 65 and I have $200,000, that's the American nightmare. So I think that like things have changed over time. Yeah, maybe my grandpa's generation or even my dad's generation, some of them were able to live that American dream and it did work out. And others, I don't think are having the same results. I mean, and I'll mention one more thing. We have multiple people or thousands, hundreds of thousands of college graduates that are working at like Starbucks with hundreds of thousands in debt. That's not a dream. That's a nightmare. So I think we need to rethink the entire system, how this thing goes. And that's partly why we pitch or we talk about real estate so much, because we're like, guys, like you got to do something different.
No, that's exactly my point, Mitch. Like, this is why I chose real estate for both these things. Like, yes, this may have worked in our grandparents' generation, right? But then our parents' generation. So I think that's when things changed. That's when you started seeing, these retirement accounts. Well, they're not paying. And hopefully people kind of wake up to this. Like, okay, I've put money into this system. I've put money into this account for someone else to invest my money, which, right, like typically has zero, like no cash flow, right? So they're not benefiting on this forced savings plan. Even if it's earning interest, it's still on paper. Right. And so our parents' generation, the generation above us, are not actualizing a lot of the benefits of this money that they've put away or the paid off house. Right. And so it's like, this is why I chose real estate. And then the other piece that you just mentioned is then you also see these highly educated, college educated kids coming out of school with a shit ton of debt and they cannot get a job. I mean, if Travis was here, he'd be talking about how they're all baristas. For some reason, Travis hates baristas. And I think mailman too. He hates mail delivery people. But my yeah, it's a thing. But my point is then you have this other extreme. You have these young folks coming out of college with these big degrees and highly educated, but they also cannot go get a good paying job. So that part of the dream has also changed too. So for those two reasons, like this is why I chose real estate. Like I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad back in the early 2000s. And I'm like, oh shit, there's another way. There's another way besides spending my entire life working for someone else to maybe one day retire when I'm really old and can't enjoy life. And this is why I chose cash flow real estate.
Yeah. Well, I think too, it's like, if you're listening to this show and you're like, oh man, should I be a full-time investor or should I be a nurse or should I go be an attorney or whatever you want to do other than real estate? I think you can have both. And I think it's not a 0 and 1 thing. I've met people that are in their professional life, but they use real estate for tax benefits, for cash flow, for equity. And I think that's a really good way to play it. So for example, you're like, look, I'm passionate about being a nurse. I want to be a nurse until I'm 60. That's amazing. But be careful to just rely on just that one thing to secure you in retirement, right? And to give you options over time, because it's not the same as it used to be. And so for me, like if you're playing that game of a W-2, that's fine, but consider real estate though, because real estate, $1 million asset that pays for itself over time could make you a millionaire at retirement versus having $200,000.
But I think it's important to like set yourself up today, right? Like we have some folks some men and women in our elite mastermind that are making big moves at a young age. And I think about, that first home that I bought, that first investment property that I bought that I house hacked. It wasn't a home run, but it looked like a home run later. It was a basic 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. I lived in one room. I rented out the other 2 and I lived less than I could anywhere else, right? That first deal, that set me up. I was 23 years old, right? We have an elite mastermind member who's 22 years old, just bought his first fourplex, bought a fourplex and cash flowed $1,000 a month. Is that deal going to make him a millionaire? I would argue absolutely yes. And it's not just that one deal. He was willing to take action, make a move, buy that first deal. Is it a perfect deal? No, it's not. But is it a good deal? Yes. It puts cash flow in his pocket. It exercises the muscle of taking action. And will that property be worth double in his lifetime? Fuck yeah, it will be, because he's 22 years old and bought a property. Now, there's a lot of people, a lot of boomers, right? That like they're in their 70s going, shit, I wish I would have bought assets in my 20s and in my 30s. I should have. But they were talked into, work, put a little money in savings or put a little money in this retirement account. And so I think this is where a lot of people have been led this lie. For one, most retirement accounts, I mean, I think all arguably don't create cash flow. So don't allow you to actually exit your job or replace your income. Where cash flow real estate can actually, you have income off of the real estate. You get all the tax benefits, which we're not going to go into all those tax benefits on this episode, but you got depreciation, you have interest write-off, all these things. And over time, historically, real estate has gone up in value over time and will continue to go up in value, I would argue, forever. Are there dips and stuff? Absolutely, yes. But can you draw a straight line through real estate going up over a long period of time? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it comes down to when I look at this data, and you started this way, and I think that it's relevant that like the way we're thinking about how we provide value to society needs to change. We're not paid on the degree that we have. Okay, we're just not, unfortunately. And if you're listening to this and you're getting a degree, that's fine because you're learning how to learn. That's what I learned in college. I learned how to learn. And they don't have a monopoly on that either. You can learn other places. So it can serve some benefits, but your degree is not going to decide your success or your financial success. Your economic impact is. So real estate allows you to have a leveraged economic impact. So I can go out and I can buy a property, I can raise money or bring my own money to the table. I can use private money, or I can use debt from a bank. I can use tenants to pay down my debt. I can cash flow the property. I can grow it, and I'm making an economic impact into society. And I'm actually bettering that property, making it more efficient. And I'm winning because of that, because I made an economic impact. I don't need any kind of qualifications or degree for that. That economic impact can be way, way more over the lifetime than somebody who's gone and gotten all the degrees in the world. So as you're studying, or you're getting a degree, or you're choosing your career path, I would understand that all of those things are not going to matter if you're not making a big economic impact. So like, for example, we talked about this before, if you're a school teacher, I have huge respect for school teachers because they're taking care of our next generation. They make a massive, massive emotional impact, right? They teach our young people how to be, in a lot of cases, elementary school, how to behave, how to communicate, emotional IQ, all of those things, the basics of math, writing, all those things. But the economic impact of a teacher is low. And so unfortunately, in our society, we don't pay school teachers that well. And if you're a school teacher all of your life and that's the only thing, it can be hard to retire or hard to have the retirement maybe that you want. And so I think for me, I'm like, also lean into these other philosophies. Hey, maybe I'm a school teacher and I also invest in real estate. Maybe I also do, maybe not to our level, but like maybe a couple properties, because that's going to make a large economic impact and give you the ability to retire and live a good life after you're done, in the working world.
I've watched school teachers accumulate a couple properties over a kind of a longer period of time and actually be able to retire 20 years early because of the cash flow and or appreciation that they've gained from these properties just for taking these couple moves. And I think more importantly, I think people forget, like, this is not just about real estate. This is not just about financial freedom, but this is about your life. And I know, Mitch, you ask your daughters, like, what do you want your life to look like? And I've adopted that. And for my own kids, my kids are 15 and 17, right? And so they're thinking about like what they're going to do as they become adults, right? And I love that you asked your children, what do you want your life to look like? And I wish, not only do I wish more parents would ask their children that, I think adults need to look themselves in the mirror and ask themselves what they want their life to look like. Because I had someone recently, they reposted something like a clip from our podcast, and they said, hey, if you want to learn about money, listen to the 0 to 100 podcast. And I'm thinking like, maybe this is the wrong message, because the message like I'm trying to preach, it's freedom, right? It is not just time freedom, it is life freedom, right? And so real estate is a tool. Real estate is an opportunity. Real estate is the only way that I know how, or that made sense to me, to create the lifestyle I want. So like, understand what you want your life to look like. And I don't care if you're 3 years old or 30 years old or 50 years old, like, look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, what do you want your life to look like? And if you always do what you've always done, and that's, a job, you have a job you love, great, right? But if you're just slaving away every day at something you hate, and you're putting a little bit of money away, or a lot of people aren't putting any money away, like, you need to change something. And real estate is a great way to do that. Travis says it all the time. Sorry, I'm giving Travis credit while he's not even here. Like, real estate is the great equalizer, you know? And I think it's an opportunity for the average person to invest in assets that will put money in their pocket and build wealth over time and put them in a better position, not just to have financial freedom, but to actually go live the life they want. I don't know anything else, any other asset on the planet that allows a person to do that.
I agree. And I think, when I look at this debt, going all the way back to the data, I think it's important to look at the data and look at the actual results than just, simply listen to people. For example, we listen to our teachers or sometimes our parents or our professors, and they tell us, go get the degree, go do this. That's what's going to make you successful. But take a second to look at the data. And if you're in the beginning of your career or your 40s, 50s, wherever you are, don't be that data. Don't be 65 and have $200,000 put away, because that's a stressful existence. So I would look at that data and realize that what you've been told isn't necessarily true. And there's other ways to do it. Real estate is one of those ways where you can go build wealth, go build equity, go build cash flow in another direction, to where you can go live that life like Gabe talked about. And it's really important. And there's a lot of scenarios potentially listening to this show. If you're working in a job and you absolutely hate it, maybe you want to be a real estate investor, like a full-time real estate investor, like we do. And that's what we talk about all the time in our Elite Mastermind, by the way. We have a mastermind where we talk about how to become that, how to do that, how to look at properties, how to build your network, all of those things. So maybe that's something you want to explore as well. But whatever it is, whatever you do, whether you're W-2 or you're full-time, get involved in real estate, because the benefits are so good. The government, and we, in a lot of ways, is a partner of real estate investors when it comes to tax law and things like that. So again, we won't go into that on this episode, but like, the benefits are so great that it can enhance your life. And in the end, it's not about money. Who cares about money? Who cares about cars and houses and all that stuff? It really, really, really is about time.
Well, and Mitch, hearing you say this, it also reminds me, like, we need to tell our listeners, or not so much tell them, like, the advice I would have, like, get around people and take advice from people that are actually living the life that you want, or a life similar than you want. Like, I had a lot of adults as a young child give advice that I'm like, the fuck they talking about? Like, they seem unhappy. They're working their entire life. They seem unhappy. They can't wait until Friday to get away from their job. They can't wait to have this 2-week vacation, the only two-week vacation they get. Like, they don't control their life. And when I started investing in real estate, I had people tell me, you care so much about money, Gabe. You care so much about money. And I remember thinking, the hell I do. I care about freedom and what assets can allow me to do in my life, so I can raise my own children, hang out with my wife, hang out with my kids, go travel, go give back, go give big tips when I go to dinner. Like, I want to build enough wealth so I can not only do cool things, that I can be around the people that are important to me. And I would argue you're giving up most of your day working. You're giving up most of your week, most of your month, most of your year, and most of your fucking life. You're trading your time for money. I would argue that you care way more about money than I do, because you're actually exchanging almost all of your time for money. I'm trying to create a life through cash flow real estate, so I am not a slave to money, right? And it's like, it's very interesting. So it goes back to, like, be careful who you take advice from. If someone's telling you do this, that, and the other thing, and they don't have the life that you want, they're not happy, they're out of shape, they hate their job, like, be careful who you're taking advice from, right? And it's the same in every aspect of life. Like, but you have so many people, I had so many people telling real estate's risky. Like, why do you care about building wealth? Like, find people that are living the life you want or close to the life you want. Take advice from them. Just be careful.
I love that. Yeah, I was talked out of, really going all in real estate in my early 20s. And I wish I wouldn't listen, because it was folks that owned a couple units. They managed them themselves. They were miserable. They also had a full-time job, that kind of stuff. And so definitely be careful about who you're taking advice from, and make sure to get around people that are living your life, because they'll rub off on you and they'll teach you, and they'll, a lot of times bring you under the wing and show you the ropes. And so, yeah, identify people that are living the life you want, listen to them, ignore the noise, and go buy some real estate.